Good morning. Man, it's great to see us. Thank you so much for taking time to come worship with us today on this Resurrection Sunday. Now, we recognize this is Resurrection Sunday, right? Yes. That's why we gather together. It is also what? It's April Fool's Day as well. We understand that. April 1st. Did you know that April Fool's dates all the way? Well, I mean, it's always been there, but April Fool's actually began at about 1563. 1563, when we switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, it was established by the Council of Trent in 1563. It also is known to be connected to the festivals in ancient Rome. One of the festivals called Hilaria, where people would dress up in costumes, try and fool one another by how they were dressed, and just had a good time with that. We also know that in our day, it's kind of tied to the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere, when weather patterns are not normal. And we know that all too well in Texas, don't we? Weather patterns are not normal at all here at this time of year. But, you know, April Fool's is that time when your friends and those that you're close to try to pull a fast one on you. And that's not unusual to TV, radio, news. It's happened throughout time. In fact, in 1957, the BBC reported that Swiss farmers were experiencing record spaghetti crops. They even showed footage of them harvesting spaghetti from trees. They had record crops of spaghetti. Pulled a fast one on them on April 1st. In 1985, Sports Illustrated ran a story in their edition that there was a rookie pitcher who was pitching at 168 miles an hour. And they ran the whole story on that. It was pretty amazing. And then in 1996, Taco Bell said they had finally made an agreement and they had purchased the Liberty Bell and renaming it the Taco Liberty Bell. People were outraged. But I think my favorite, just because I'm left-handed, the Whopper, the Burger King said they were providing Whoppers on April 1st that were left-handed Whoppers. And they had people lined up to get their left-handed Whopper all across. April Fools. Well, today we celebrate someone who resurrected from a borrowed tomb just outside of Jerusalem, and it's no joke. You'd be a fool not to believe it. And that's why churches across our nation, there are more people attending church today than any other day on the year, because we still accept and believe and affirm the most incredible miracle that's ever happened in the history of mankind, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We celebrate that today. Hear it again. Luke 24 says, "He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Remember what He told you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and He would rise on the third day." And this is that day we celebrate. We remember the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the single most significant event in human history. We know that. And yet there are those who still deny it, who still do not accept it, even with overwhelming evidence. First century historians Eusebius and Josephus recorded and attest to it. Jesus appeared to more than 500 witnesses. Beyond that, you have the disciples who died martyr's death. Would you really die a martyr's death for a lie? Would you do that? They did. It wasn't a lie. Jesus resurrected from the dead and has been changing lives ever since, and has changed many of your lives. That's why you gather here today. But when you encounter Jesus Christ, you're not left the same. You have a reaction to Jesus Christ. You always do. And so today I want to look at some of the people and how they reacted to Jesus, and then bring it down to you and to me. The first I would mention is Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate, you remember Pontius Pilate? He's the one that washed his hands of Jesus. Pontius Pilate really didn't want to kill Jesus, didn't want to send him to his crucifixion. Twice he's brought before Pontius Pilate, and both times Pontius Pilate seeks to find a way to get Jesus out of the situation he's in, because he doesn't want him to die. He doesn't find any fault with Jesus, and yet the people continue to scream, "We want him crucified." So Pontius Pilate has his trump card. Hey, on this day, you Jews have a tradition that you'll release a criminal, and they'll be free. So he gets the worst of the worst, Barabbas. I mean, it is an ace in a hole. It's a done deal. He brings Barabbas out and sends Jesus beside him and said, surely they'll choose Barabbas to crucify him. And they point to Jesus. He's dumbfounded. More than that, Pontius Pilate's wife sent him a note before he stood there and did that and said, "Do not mess with this man. I had a dream about him last night. I've been suffering all night. Do not do any harm to this man." And he ignored it. He ignored the note from his own wife. You see, Pontius Pilate tried to dismiss Jesus. That's what he wanted to do, just dismiss him, get rid of him. And it's not a real surprise that he would ignore all of the warnings. The Bible says in Proverbs 12:15, "Fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to others." And he didn't listen to anybody. He foolishly followed his own path in all of his arrogance, and then in all of his cowardice, would not stand up to the people. And he sent Jesus to his death. Oh, how about Herod Antipas? You see, when Pilate discovered that he was Galilean, well, Herod Antipas just happened to be in Jerusalem at that time and said, "Oh, he's Galilean. Well, let's send him to Herod Antipas. He rules over that, and so I'll send him here. Maybe I can dismiss him that way." Well, Herod Antipas had heard of Jesus, knew of his miracles, and so when Jesus comes before Herod Antipas tries to discount Jesus. It says, "Hey, let's have a little show, Jesus. I heard you do miracles. Do one for me. Do a miracle for me. Put on a show for me." And he completely discounts Jesus and who Jesus is. I wonder how many times have we done the same thing. Jesus is not our first thought. He's our last thought. In a panic, we turn to him. Our attitude may be different, but what we're doing is, like Antipas, is much the same. "Hey, Jesus, you're my genie in the bottle. I'll put you on the shelf when I need you, and when I don't, I'll leave you there. Do for me what I need." We kind of act like Herod Antipas sometimes. We discount Jesus. How about Caiaphas? Caiaphas, the reigning high priest. But you have to take Caiaphas and all the religious leadership together, because they wanted to do one thing, and that was to destroy Jesus. That's what they desired more than anything else, to destroy Jesus. And why? Why would they? Because, see, Caiaphas and the religious leadership, they had a system in place. They had all the rules in place. They had the religious system in place. And it was a well-oiled machine. And if you didn't follow the rules, then that machine would crush you. And they enjoyed the power they had. Jesus steps on the scene and says, "I appreciate your rules. I appreciate your religion. But you understand your rules and religion, all those do is point to me. Because I'm here to provide not a religion, but a relationship." And he desires a relationship. In fact, that's why Jesus said the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. And when he said that, it infuriated the religious leadership. That's why Caiaphas said this: "It would be good if one man died for the people," pointing directly to Jesus. Get him out of the way. Let's let our machinery crush him. Our religious machinery crush him. And Jesus said, "No, it's not about the religion, it's about a relationship." Why was Caiaphas so angry? Because when you have a religion without a relationship, it always leads to rebellion. That's why so many people walk away from the church, because they just have religion. And when life gets hard, you walk away from that because you don't have a relationship. You just have a religion, and that becomes very empty. And it always leads to rebellion when there's not a relationship that brings life to you. Always does. Well, the hard one is Simon Peter. Simon Peter, you heard him first and you saw him first. You always did. He was loudest and proudest. Always was. His love for Jesus was undeniable. Always was. He declared it. And yet Jesus would look at him and said, "Peter, tonight you're going to deny me 3 times. "No, Jesus, I'll go to the grave with you." "No, you're going to deny me 3 times. Before the rooster crows, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. There in the courtyard, this young girl comes to Peter, looks at him and says, "Hey, aren't you one of those disciples?" And she's young, and so he just dismisses her and walks away and says, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." Walks a little bit further. Later in the evening, he's standing there, and another woman comes to him and said, "I think I saw you with Jesus. You're one of those disciples, aren't you?" And this time he gets a little more intense, and he swears by an oath, "I do not know him." He swears by an oath. Finally, later that evening, there's a group that approach him. They say, "You're one of the disciples. In fact, you're from Galilee. That's where you're one of them." Peter, who's so passionate, the passion gets the best of him. And he not only gets so angry, he begins to curse. And he says, I do not know him. And he walks away. And as soon as he says, I don't know him, rooster crowed. And everything that Jesus said came flooding back. And he was ashamed. And he ran into the night just to get away because he had denied Jesus. He was humiliated. He was devastated because he truly did love Jesus. But yet he denied him 3 times. We've all been there. We've all blown it. Peter did what many of us would do. He ran away and he went back to what he really enjoyed doing, fishing. And you got any fishermen here? Anybody like to fish? Has anybody ever gone fishing and not caught anything? Don't lie. Yeah. Yeah. Peter went fishing, fished all night, didn't catch a thing. The Bible says that he went with some of the other disciples. Went fishing. It was Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, James, John, and 2 other disciples went fishing. Fished all night. Sun's starting to come up. There's somebody on the seashore, on the shore there. And he calls out to them. They don't know it's Jesus. Calls out to them and says, hey, guys, you catch any fish tonight? No. Well, hey, cast your net on the other side. Now, let me ask you a question. If you've been fishing all night, and you've been throwing that line in that water all night, don't you think you would have thrown it on the other side of the boat at some point during the night? I mean, it's kind of an insulting question, isn't it? And so they look at each other and go, all right. And they throw it on the other side. And all of a sudden they have a catch that is so large, their nets begin to break. Peter instantly knows it's Jesus. He doesn't wait for the boat to turn around. He jumps in the water and begins to swim to Jesus. Now, what has Peter just done? He's denied Jesus 3 times. He knows Jesus. Knows that Jesus knows. What am I trying to say? I don't know. Peter knows that Jesus knows. And he still swims to Jesus. Yeah, there we go, knows. I'll get it out sooner or later. He comes to Jesus. And Jesus restores Peter. I mean, he doesn't just restore him, he gives him a renewed purpose. Because Peter is going to be the defined leader of the new church. And that's his purpose. From failure to an enormous success. Peter. I just wonder, we gather here today, and I wonder, what will you do with Jesus? Because you have a choice today. I mean, you may have been drugged here by family, and you're not here of your own free will. I understand that. My mom and dad did that to me. In fact, I remember as a kid, my mom said, church, 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 that's all we ever do. I'm tired of church. I used to say that to my mom all the time. Look what's happened now. God does have a sense of humor. I'll just tell you that. What will you do with Jesus? Jeremiah 29:11 says this, God has plans for you. There are good plans that will give you hope in a future. God has a plan for you, and it's a good plan, and His desire is to give you hope and a future. Not a religion, a relationship. That's what He desires. That's why Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father unless they come through me. And His desire is for you to come into a relationship with Him that you may have life. But maybe you're like Pilate today, and you've just been dismissing Jesus for a long time. Oh, your family has talked about Him. You know your family even believes, but you really don't. You just kind of wash your hands of Him. And said, I'm only here because my parents kind of make me come, and I'm going to honor my mom, so I'm here, but I've been washing my hands of Jesus a long time. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're kind of like Herod Antipas. You've been discounting Jesus. You know, hey, Jesus, do me a trick. You're my genie in the bottle. I'll pull you off the shelf when I need you. I'll rub that, and you help me out because I'm in a pickle, and I need a help. And I know you can do it. My parents talked about it for so long. I know you can do that for me, so would you do that for me today? I'm hurting. Help me. Or maybe you're like Caiaphas. Oh, no, you don't want to destroy Jesus, but you're really angry at Him. Life hasn't turned out like you thought it would. And so now you're just angry. And you're here today, and you've been angry for a long time. But understand, the Bible says the rain falls on the just and the unjust. You're going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You're going to have pain in your life. But Jesus said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will walk with you always through your pain. And life may not have turned out like you thought. And certainly, you're upset about that. We get that. But understand, God's design is to walk with you through the pain. You were never intended to do that alone. He loves you. He's crazy about you. He has your picture on his refrigerator and in his wallet. And when someone comes and say, hey, do you know Tony? Yeah, I got his picture here. And this big old line of pictures fall out. And yours is right there. Yeah, he's right here. He loves you. Maybe you're like Peter. You just kind of had opportunity to speak for Jesus, but you were silent. You realize silence is denial? And you just don't talk about it. I'll be a secret agent Christian. Yeah, no such thing. And maybe you just denied Jesus. You kind of walked away. Man, what a glorious day to walk back. What a glorious day to remember why we're here. And we celebrate the risen Savior. So whatever your attitude today, what will you do with Jesus? That is the ultimate question. And let me tell you this, you would be a fool not to accept him today. To walk away from Jesus today would be absolutely foolish. So on this day, this April Fool's Day, don't be a fool. Don't be a fool. Don't be duped by our culture. But come and understand and believe and accept. There's one way. His name is Jesus Christ. All roads do not lead to heaven. You can't just be good and go to heaven. You have to be in a relationship. You just can't be in church and go to heaven. You've got to be in a relationship with Jesus Christ. He offers that to you today. Why would you not receive that? Let's pray together.